This video is made possible thanks to my supporters, especially Drowsy Lemon and Clown Keeper. Thank you guys so much. So, Five Nights at Freddy's, huh? Fun game, am I right? Yeah, so Five Nights at Freddy's is a game series I've always had quite the fondness for. I discovered it not long after the second game was announced, and I was hooked. I'd immediately gone back in time a little to see what had made the reveal of this hot new horror game so enticing for a lot of people, and thus I was dragged down a huge rabbit hole of game theories and let's plays, facts, videos and reviews. Five Nights at Freddy's had become inescapable. And then I fell out of the series. Yep, that's what happened. I stopped following the franchise for a long time after the 5th mainline game's sister location had released. I kinda watched through a playthrough the first couple nights, thought it was boring and just kinda stopped following whatever happened next. I was completely unaware that the franchise had even come to a somewhat actual conclusion until a couple years back. Shocking, truly. And I mean, it's kinda odd I was interested in the series in the first place. You know, the kind of games I usually stick to are platformers and rhythm games. Horror was never really a genre that I was necessarily ever interested in, and I'm surprised that the series even ever caught my attention. But in that case, there must have been something special about FNaF that drew me and many others to it, even if it was something outside of our comfort zone. So, I wanted to go back and see just why I fell in love with the franchise in the first place, and I thought it'd only be fitting to go through the series to do a review of each of the games, and there'd be no better place to start with the original Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, Five Nights at Freddy's is interesting as it was initially conceived as Scott Cawthon's last ever game. His games weren't too popular with people and were being slammed by critics. After his last game, Chipper & Sons Lumber Company, critics noted how creepy the game seemed and how ugly some of the characters were, and that they seemed like lifeless animatronics, ones that you'd see at a place like Chuck E. Cheese. Instead of curling up and crying about it, Scott took these reviews and ran with them, turning his lovable mascot-like characters into nighttime freaks. Now, the game's setup is simple. You're a nighttime security guard at a pizzeria called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and your job is simple: don't let anything get out. Which seems odd at first, like, isn't a security guard's job to ensure that nothing gets in? Well, that all makes sense when you factor in the titular Freddy Fazbear and his crew of singing and dancing animatronics. These things aren't just generic children's entertainer robots, no. These are also crazy killer machines that get up and walk around late at night. Their objective is to get from this here stage to all the way into this here your office. Once they get there, well, I mean, they get you. Couldn't be any more simple than that. But luckily for you, your office is equipped with some rather nifty defense mechanisms. First up is your camera system. This allows you to see where exactly Freddy and his crew are in relation to your office. While sometimes a little hard to see, you can almost always spot where an animatronic is. This is a fantastic way of keeping an eye on your surroundings, since, unlike most other horror games, you're completely locked in place. Now, this is for sure just because of the hefty limitations placed upon the developer Scott Cawthon when using the ClickTeam Fusion engine. An engine he's familiar with, sure, but makes developing something on the scale of even the most simple free-roaming horror game a tough task. But I actually think it ends up benefiting the game in all honesty. The fact that you're basically defenseless and can pretty much only watch your threats get closer and closer to you as time passes by is super creepy and adds an incredibly unsettling tone to the game. Now, staring into a fuzzy screen isn't all you can do. Equipped on each side of the office are a light and a door. The light allows you to check and see if there are any threats right outside your door, necessary because, conveniently enough, that's one of the only blind spots that your cameras have. If you detect that the threat is nearby, you can hit the big red button to slam down a huge blast door, especially necessary for when Foxy the Pirate is introduced into the mix later on in the game. That would be all fine and dandy and make the game pretty easy if it weren't for the power system. Yeah, so at the start of each night, you're given a power count that drains as the night progresses, no duh. The power system manages everything: your cameras, your lights, your doors, your taxes, your wedding, you get the picture. Once your power runs out, that's it, game over. Freddy kills you and you're back to the start of the night. Actually, speaking of Freddy, let's go over our main cast. Let's start not with Freddy, but with the main threats instead, Bonnie and Chica. Bonnie is probably the most aggressive one out of the main 3 animatronics. He only ever comes from the left side of the map, and will end up at your door, to which it's your job to shut. Once shut, Bonnie will leave and go to somewhere else on the map. Chica's pretty much identical except for one key feature. She only comes on the right side and can, once again, be warded off by closing the door. Now, Chica being on the right side is notable because that side of the map features the kitchen, a place that would later become synonymous with Chica herself. You can know where Chica is on the map without ever having to check your cameras for her by listening out for the clanging sounds that she makes when in the kitchen. I guess someone forgot to check on the pizza, huh? Freddy, however, is an odd one. He works somewhat similarly to Bonnie and Chica, in which he'll roam around the map, sometimes going back and forth, eventually showing up somewhere near your office. He only ever moves when the camera is down and will, most of the time, indicate his movement with a laugh. He's also pretty unique in the fact that he never actually comes to your door. Instead, what you need to do is keep your door shut when he's near. If you need to preserve power, then only put it down when your camera is up. Otherwise, you're f***ed. He's also unique in the fact that he'll just sorta sit there. Sometimes he'll just stay there all night. Thankfully, he only activates on the third night, so for the first couple of nights you don't have to deal with him. And speaking of animatronics that only activate after the first night is over, Foxy the Pirate. Foxy will activate on the second night of the week and acts completely different to the other three. He'll wait in Pirate Cove and relies on you checking your camera, and if you don't, well, he'll come running into your office and kill you. The only way to defend against Foxy is by shutting your door just in time. Once you do, he'll return back to Pirate Cove, where you give him another chance to watch him, so he doesn't attack again. Apparently he drains power when blocked from entering the office, but I've never seen it happen. Perhaps I just got lucky, or it was a bug, but it's never happened to me, so... Speaking of threats, how about them designs, huh? Now, these characters have a very hard job here. They have to blend into these dark atmospheres and be scary in the dark whilst also needing to be appealing to children during the day, meaning that the designs for the mascots can't be too scary in order for it to remain believable. And you know what? Yeah, I think they do that pretty damn well. These designs look amazing when put in the right positions, and the poses they're put into 100% amplify that. But then, when in the bright light, these animatronics look great. They still work really well. Even over a decade later, they still do a wonderful job at being scary. The fact that there was only a one-man team behind the game is actually insanely beneficial to the scares, since we never actually see these guys move from location to location. So when you do see them move, be a little twitches, or see that their positions change ever so slightly, it's fucking terrifying. I think a lot of these scary positions are helped by the environments too. Like, these dark and gritty hallways totally add to the entire place being unsettling. They wouldn't work as well if, say for example, they were just out in the middle of the street or in a supermarket or something. I don't know what these guys do in their free time. I think the general atmosphere of the game is awesome. I love how, as soon as you load up the game, you're immediately filled in on how this game is going to make you feel. The title screen has this overwhelming droning sound with some subtle musical stings. Once you press play, you're immediately shoved into a tight, dirty office coloured with harsh greys and blacks. And I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but the cupcake that stares at you throughout your entire playthrough adds an overwhelming sense of dread. A feeling that you're not safe even in the place where you've two beefy blast doors and a functioning camera system. It just watches you all night long and makes you extremely on edge. The crazy amount of cobwebs and empty cups scattered around shows just how low the standards of the company are, and the children's drawings staring back at you keep things unsettling but in a very sinister way. Now for the hard part of the video, the lore. Now, I'm not going to go very in-depth with this, since I don't want to jump down an absolutely huge rabbit hole and turn even more insane than I already am, so we're taking this surface level. From information you can gather from posters and hidden articles around the place, we find out that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was home to some pretty awful activities. We learn that 5 children were murdered here by a mysterious man who was later caught and arrested but set free due to a severe lack of evidence. Through the phone, we have recordings from a character named Phone Guy. How many of you did it take to come up with that one, huh? He tells us about a certain event called the Bite of 87, but not much else is said and it's left purely up to interpretation. We also find out that Phone Guy is really bad at Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, dying on night 4? Come on dude, how could you? And that's it for the story of the first game in the series. Really simple, and that's awesome. There's just enough here to get people hooked and want to delve deeper into the mystery set up by the establishment, yet not too much as to spoil what happened in it. Really interesting setup, and I'd love to know more. Just maybe not 200 games more. There are also an abundance of little Easter eggs in this game. Obviously there are the aforementioned posters and news articles that appear occasionally, but there's also flashes on screen featuring extra creepy versions of Freddy and Bonnie alongside the words "It's me" and the laughter of a young child. There's also one final animatronic, Yellow Bear, nicknamed Golden Freddy by fans, which would later become his official name. This guy has a small chance of appearing in your office once you bring your camera down. He'll sit there for a bit just before jump scaring you, crashing your game afterwards. How fun! You can actually get rid of it by flicking your camera back up for a moment, and something quite neat is that you can tell when he's going to be in your office as the West Hall corner poster changes into a picture of Golden Freddy beforehand. And that is the original Five Nights at Freddy's. Pretty solid, huh? Yeah, not half bad for the first game in a series, and even better for a horror game. I think this game does an amazing job blending together all of its assets. It has great sound design, phenomenal visuals, and great gameplay mechanics that are, for the most part, really easy to understand. I understand what made this entry so fascinating for many. It was unique and a breath of fresh air for the horror genre, since most horror games around then were just zombie shooters. Despite how simple it is, the game does what it set out to do very well, and I think it shows just how talented Scott Cawthon really was at game development. He was so good that he made a sequel 4 months later, and a threequel, and another, and another, and another.